A second. That's all it takes for your life to shatter. David looked at a text. Sarah looked at a scarf. And then their 3-year-old son was gone. The fluorescent lights of the mall had never seemed so harsh. Sarah clutched her husband David's arm, her knuckles white. Their son, Leo, was gone. One minute he was there, a whirlwind of giggles and bright blue shoes, mesmerized by a display of toy cars. The next, an agonizing void. David had only turned for a second to respond to a text, and Sarah had been distracted by a vibrant scarf in a shop window. A second. That's all it took. The initial panic was a cold, sharp shock. They'd called his name, their voices rising with each unanswered cry, echoing through the vast, impersonal space. Shoppers, initially curious, soon offered sympathetic glances, then joined in the desperate search. Shopping security was alerted, the gates sealed. The air thickened with a dread that was almost palpable. David, usually so composed, was a frantic figure tearing through stores, his eyes wild. Sarah felt a peculiar detachment, as if watching the scene unfold from a great distance. This couldn't be happening, not to them, not to Leo. The police arrived swiftly, their calm professionalism a stark contrast to the chaos within Sarah and David. Officer Miller, a seasoned detective with kind, weary eyes, took their statements. Every detail, no matter how insignificant, was meticulously recorded. What was Leo wearing? His blue dinosaur t-shirt, beige shorts, and those new light-up sneakers. Did he have any distinguishing marks? A small birthmark on his left wrist. What did he like? Trucks, dinosaurs, his stuffed monkey, banana? Each answer was a fresh stab of pain, a reminder of the vibrant little boy who was now inexplicably absent. Hours bled into an eternity. The mall, once a bustling hub, became a silent, eerie shell. The search intensified. Every corner, every bathroom, every storage room meticulously scoured. Sarah sat on a cold bench, the vibrant displays around her mocking her despair. She replayed the last moments, searching for a sign, a missed clue, anything that could explain Leo's disappearance. Had she heard a strange sound, seen an unfamiliar face? Her mind was a dizzying kaleidoscope of what-ifs. David paced endlessly, making calls, his voice hoarse with urgency. He felt a profound sense of guilt, a self-reproach that gnawed at his insides. If only he hadn't looked at his phone, if only he'd held Leo's hand tighter. The first few days were a blur of police interviews, news reports, and a growing sense of helplessness. Their comfortable, stylish home, usually filled with Leo's laughter and the clutter of his toys, now felt like a mausoleum. Each toy, each drawing on the fridge was a poignant reminder of his absence. Sarah found herself staring at his untouched bed, picturing his small form nestled amongst his favorite stuffed animals. The silence was deafening, a constant echo of what was missing. She ate little, slept less, her body a vessel of raw grief and gnawing anxiety. David, meanwhile, threw himself into the search. He organized community groups, printed flyers with Leo's smiling face, and scoured every park and playground in a 10-mile radius. He refused to give up, fueled by a fierce paternal love and a desperate hope. But beneath the facade of unwavering determination, a cold fear was taking root. The police had no leads, no witnesses, no ransom calls. It was as if Leo simply vanished into thin air. Weeks turned into a suffocating eternity. The initial surge of public sympathy began to wane, replaced by a quiet, understanding sadness. The media coverage shifted from breaking news to ongoing reports, eventually becoming just another story in the daily cycle. For Sarah and David, however, time had stopped. Every sunrise was a fresh assault of despair, every sunset a confirmation of another day without their son. Sarah found solace, or perhaps just a distraction, in meticulously cleaning Leo's room, arranging his books, dusting his tiny trophies. David, in turn, worked relentlessly, channeling his grief into his architectural firm, though his focus was constantly fragmented, his mind always drifting back to Leo. The police, despite their initial efforts, seemed to be running out of options. Officer Miller visited regularly, his expressions a mixture of sympathy and professional frustration. He had exhausted every conventional lead. There were no CCTV footage anomalies, no suspicious vehicles, no known abductors in the area. The case was growing cold, a phrase that sent a shiver of pure terror down Sarah's spine. A cold case meant a forgotten child. A forgotten child meant a life forever lost. Then came the breakthrough. It wasn't a call or a witness. It was an anonymous tip, a cryptic message sent to the police department's digital forensics unit, a coded message embedded within a seemingly innocuous online forum. It took their tech team days to decrypt it, but when they did, it sent shockwaves through the investigation. The message contained a single, chilling photo, a blurry image of a child in a dimly lit room playing with a toy truck, and in the corner of the frame, undeniably, was Leo's blue dinosaur t-shirt. The photo, while blurry, was undeniable. It was Leo. He was alive. The relief that washed over Sarah and David was so profound it almost buckled their knees, but it was quickly followed by a new surge of terror. The message also contained a demand, not for money, but for something far more insidious: David's withdrawal from the upcoming bid for the city's ambitious new waterfront development. The project, worth billions, was the crowning jewel of his career, a testament to years of tireless work, and his main competitor, a ruthless magnate named Richard Thorne, was known for his cutthroat tactics. David felt a cold certainty settle in his gut. Thorne. It had to be him. The man had a reputation for playing dirty, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. To take a child, to use a child as a pawn in a business rivalry, was an act of unimaginable cruelty. David's blood ran cold with a mixture of rage and revulsion. He had always respected Thorne's business acumen, even if he disliked his methods. But this crossed every conceivable line. This was unforgivable. Sarah stared at the photo, tears streaming down her face, a mixture of joy and renewed anguish. He was alive, he was playing, but he wasn't with them. Her heart ached with a physical pain, a longing so intense it was almost unbearable. The thought of Leo being alone in an unfamiliar place, without his parents, without his banana, tore at her soul. She wanted to scream, to rage, to demand his immediate return. But she also knew they had to be careful. Leo's life depended on it. Officer Miller, after conferring with his superiors, approached David with a grim expression. The situation was unprecedented. They couldn't simply give in to the demands without a trace, without knowing where Leo was, without ensuring his safety. But they also couldn't risk Leo's life. It was a delicate, dangerous game of mousetrap. The police decided to play along, to make it appear as if David was considering withdrawing from the bid, hoping to draw the kidnapper out, to buy themselves time to locate Leo. David felt a profound sense of conflict, his career versus his son. The choice, in his heart, was no choice at all. He would give up everything for Leo. But he also knew that Thorne, if it was indeed him, was cunning. He wouldn't be easily tricked. David decided to publicly announce his consideration of withdrawing, citing personal reasons, a vague nod to the distress his family was experiencing. He hoped it would be enough to appease the kidnapper, to show them he was complying, while giving the police the precious time they needed. The public announcement sent ripples through the business community. His rivals were puzzled, his allies concerned. Thorne, however, remained outwardly impassive, a slight, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his eyes. He watched David's press conference on television, a glass of expensive scotch in hand, a glint of satisfaction in his cold eyes. He believed he had won. He believed David was broken, but he underestimated the depth of a father's love and the relentless determination of a mother's hope. Sarah, watching David on television, felt a mix of pride and fear. He was putting on a brave face, but she could see the strain in his eyes, the almost imperceptible tremor in his voice. She knew the agony he was enduring, the impossible burden he carried. She wished she could be there with him, to hold his hand, to share the weight of their shared nightmare. But she was confined to their home, waiting, praying, hoping for a sign, for a miracle. The police, meanwhile, were working tirelessly, tracing the anonymous tip, analyzing the metadata of the photo, trying to pinpoint its origin. The online forum was a rabbit hole of encrypted messages and proxy servers, a digital maze designed to obscure identity. But they had a team of brilliant cyber forensics experts, relentless in their pursuit. They knew time was of the essence. Every second that passed was another second Leo was away from his family, another second he was in the hands of a dangerous man. David, despite the public facade, was a mess of emotion. Rage, fear, desperation, guilt. He found himself pacing his office late into the night, staring out at the city lights. The gleaming skyscrapers a testament to his ambition, now overshadowed by the darkness of his son's absence. He thought of Leo's infectious laugh, his boundless energy, his innocent trust. The thought of Thorn orchestrating this cruel game filled him with a primal fury. He wanted to confront him, to tear him apart, to demand his son back. But he knew he couldn't. He had to be strategic, patient, for Leo's sake. Sarah found herself talking to Leo, even though he wasn't there. She'd sit in his room, surrounded by his toys, whispering stories, singing his favorite lullabies. It was a coping mechanism, a way to keep his memory alive, to maintain a connection, however ethereal. She imagined his little face, his bright eyes, listening to her words. She held his stuffed monkey, Banana, close, inhaling its familiar scent, a faint trace of Leo clinging to its worn fur. It brought her a bittersweet comfort, a fragile thread connecting her to her missing son. The police investigation continued, slow and painstaking. They narrowed down the possible locations of the encrypted forum posts, identifying a cluster of IP addresses that pointed to a specific part of the city. It was a lead, a small crack in the wall of secrecy, but it was enough to reignite their determination. Officer Miller felt a surge of renewed hope. They were getting closer. He just prayed they weren't too late. David's public announcement had a subtle but significant effect. Thorn, feeling confident in his victory, became slightly less cautious. He started sending more frequent, albeit still coded messages, nudging David to formally withdraw from the bid. These messages, however, provided the police with more data, more threads to pull, more breadcrumbs to follow. Each communication was a risk for Thorn, a small opening in his carefully constructed anonymity. Sarah, despite her personal anguish, found a flicker of strength. She started volunteering at a local charity that supported families of missing children. It was a way to channel her pain, to connect with others who understood her grief, and to feel a sense of purpose. She shared her story, listened to others, and found a fragile comfort in their shared experiences. It also gave her a sense of fighting back, of refusing to be a passive victim. The police, meanwhile, had identified a specific building within the clustered IP addresses, an old, unassuming warehouse on the outskirts of the city, owned by a shell corporation with links to Thorn. It was a long shot, but it was their best lead yet. Officer Miller assembled a tactical team, meticulously planning their approach. They had to be swift, silent, and precise. Leo's safety was paramount. The night of the raid was a whirlwind of tension and anticipation. Sarah and David waited at the police station, their hearts pounding in unison. Officer Miller had promised to keep them updated, but the silence stretched, each minute an eternity. Sarah clutched David's hand, her nails digging into his palm. David stared blankly at the wall, his mind a torrent of prayers and desperate hopes. The call finally came, a little after midnight. Officer Miller's voice was calm, but a hint of relief was discernible. They had found Leo. He was safe, unharmed. The words were a balm to their tortured souls, a cascade of pure, unadulterated joy. Sarah burst into tears, tears of relief, of gratitude, of overwhelming love. David pulled her into a fierce embrace, his own eyes brimming with unshed tears. Their son was coming home. Leo, a little disoriented and subdued, but otherwise healthy, was brought to the police station. The reunion was a blur of hugs, kisses, and whispered endearments. Sarah scooped him into her arms, burying her face in his soft hair, inhaling his familiar scent. He was thinner, a little paler, but it was him, her Leo. David knelt before him, his voice thick with emotion, telling him how much he loved him, how much they had missed him. Leo, initially overwhelmed, soon clung to them both, burying his face in their shoulders, a silent plea for comfort and reassurance. Thorne was apprehended at the warehouse, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. He had been so close, so sure of his victory. The police also found the toy truck from the photo, along with other evidence linking him to the kidnapping. He was charged with kidnapping, extortion, and several other offenses. The business rivalry had escalated into a criminal act, one that would cost him dearly. The days that followed were a period of healing and adjustment. Leo was clingy, needing constant reassurance, but slowly, gradually, he began to return to his old self. His infectious laugh, once a distant memory, filled their home again. He demanded stories, insisted on playing with his trucks, and snuggled close during bedtime, his small hand clutching Banana. Sarah and David poured all their love and attention into him, making up for the lost weeks, rebuilding the sense of security that had been so cruelly shattered. The waterfront development bid, once the source of so much ambition and anguish, now seemed insignificant. David had formally withdrawn his consideration, realizing that some things were far more valuable than any professional achievement. His focus shifted entirely to his family, to the precious gift of having Leo back. He promised himself he would never again take a single moment for granted. Sarah, still healing from the trauma, found strength in Leo's resilience. She continued her volunteer work, now with a deeper understanding of the pain and the hope that families of missing children experienced. She became an advocate, sharing their story, raising awareness, and offering support to those who were still searching. The experience had changed them, individually and as a couple. Their love for Leo and for each other had been forged in the crucible of their darkest nightmare. They had faced the unthinkable and emerged, scarred but stronger. The memory of those weeks would forever be etched in their hearts, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the indomitable power of love. The mall, once a place of terror, slowly began to lose its sinister grip, replaced by the warmth of their son's hand in theirs, a constant, tangible reminder of their miraculous reunion. The whispers in the hallways of David's architectural firm were unavoidable. Colleagues, initially sympathetic, now eyed him with a mixture of curiosity and thinly veiled speculation. His public statement about withdrawing from the bid, deliberately vague, had only fueled the rumor mill. Some believed he was simply overwhelmed by the personal tragedy. Others suspected a more strategic retreat. David, however, cared little for the office gossip. His world had shrunk to the confines of his family and the overwhelming joy of Leo's return. He spent his days at the office going through the motions, signing papers, attending meetings, but his mind was rarely truly present. He'd catch himself staring out the window, replaying the moment Leo was placed back into their arms, the sheer, unadulterated relief that had washed over him. His ambition, once a driving force, now felt hollow, insignificant. The waterfront development, a project he had poured years of his life into, held no appeal. His priority was Leo, ensuring his little boy felt safe, loved, and whole again. Sarah, too, was navigating her own emotional landscape. The initial euphoria of Leo's return had given way to a quieter, more profound sense of gratitude, interwoven with lingering anxiety. She found herself checking on Leo constantly, even in his sleep, a hand gently placed on his chest to feel the reassuring rhythm of his breathing. The shadows of fear still lurked, ready to resurface at unexpected moments. A sudden loud noise, a stranger too close to Leo, could send a jolt of panic through her. Their home, once filled with the ghosts of Leo's absence, now thrummed with his renewed presence. He was slowly, cautiously rediscovering his world. His trucks and dinosaurs were played with again, his favorite books read aloud countless times. But there was a new quietness to him, a subtle shift in his playful exuberance. He still laughed, still ran, but he clung to Sarah and David more, his small hand often reaching for theirs. He asked questions, innocent yet heartbreaking, about where he had been, why he couldn't see them. Sarah and David answered with gentle reassurance, simplifying the truth, protecting him from the darker realities of his experience. Dining Thorne's arrest was a quiet affair, a small paragraph in the local news amidst other daily headlines. The police, wanting to avoid a media circus that could further traumatize Leo, kept the details close. For David, however, it brought a profound sense of justice, a quiet satisfaction. Thorne's betrayal, his cold calculation, had been exposed. The legal proceedings would be long and arduous, but David knew that Thorne would face the consequences of his actions. The business world, however, continued to churn. With David effectively out of the running for the waterfront project, other contenders emerged, scrambling for the prestigious contract. The initial shock of his withdrawal had morphed into a pragmatic reshuffling of the cards. David watched it all with a detached amusement. The high stakes, the ruthless competition, all seemed so trivial now. His perspective had been irrevocably altered. One evening, as Sarah tucked Leo into bed, he looked up at her, his big blue eyes serious. "Mommy," he whispered, "I missed Banana." Sarah's heart ached. During his time away, he had been separated from his beloved stuffed monkey. She hugged him tight. "I know, sweetie, but Banana missed you too, and now you're together again." She watched as he snuggled Banana close, a small, comforted sigh escaping his lips. It was a small victory, a tiny step in his long journey back to normalcy. David began spending more time at home, leaving the office earlier, dedicating himself to reconnecting with Leo. They built towering block castles, read stories about brave knights and dragons, and spent hours in the park, pushing Leo on the swing, his laughter echoing through the trees. These moments, simple yet profound, were a balm to David's soul. He realized how much he had missed, how easily life's trivialities could overshadow its true treasures. Sarah, emboldened by Leo's slow but steady recovery, started channeling her energy into something more concrete. The charity work, initially a distraction, now felt like a calling. She became a vocal advocate for better security measures in public places, for more effective early warning systems for missing children. She shared their story, not for sympathy, but for awareness, for change. She wanted to ensure that no other family had to endure the agonizing weeks of uncertainty they had faced. The first time Leo asked to go to the mall again was a moment of quiet trepidation for Sarah and David. The memory of that day still loomed large, a dark cloud over what was once a mundane activity, but they knew they couldn't shield him forever. They had to help him reclaim his childhood, his normalcy. So, hand in hand, they returned, choosing a quieter weekday morning. The mall felt different, transformed. The harsh fluorescent lights now seemed softer, the crowds less overwhelming. David held Leo's hand tightly, his gaze sweeping their surroundings, a constant, protective vigilance. Sarah walked beside them, a knot of anxiety in her stomach, but also a fierce determination. They navigated the aisles, bought Leo a new toy truck, a shiny red fire engine, and even managed to smile as he giggled at its flashing lights. It was a small step, a symbolic reclaiming of a place that had held so much pain. Leo's progress was gradual, with good days and challenging ones. He sometimes woke from nightmares, crying for his parents, needing to be held close. But with each passing day, his resilience shone brighter. His curiosity returned, his playful spirit reemerged, and the shadows of his ordeals slowly receded into the background. He was still their Leo, a little older, a little wiser, but still full of life and love. David and Sarah found a new rhythm in their marriage. The shared trauma had deepened their bond, forging an unbreakable connection. They communicated more openly, supported each other more fiercely, and cherished every moment with their son with an intensity they hadn't known before. The business world and its cutthroat rivalries seemed a distant echo, a faint whisper against the vibrant symphony of their family's renewed life. The legal case against Thorne proceeded. David was called to testify, detailing the threats, the demands, the anguish. It was difficult, revisiting those dark weeks, but he did it for Leo, for justice. Thorne, unrepentant to the end, was eventually convicted and sentenced, his once powerful empire crumbling around him. It was a stark reminder that some lines once crossed could never be uncrossed. Life slowly began to normalize, though a permanent change had occurred. The carefree innocence of their pre-kidnapping life was gone, replaced by a deeper appreciation for the simple joys, a heightened awareness of life's preciousness. Every hug, every laugh, every bedtime story was savored, held close to their hearts. Leo, their brave, resilient little boy, was a living testament to their enduring love and the power of hope. Sarah, now a prominent voice in child safety advocacy, often spoke at conferences and community events. She shared their story not as a tragedy, but as a journey of survival, of resilience, of the unbreakable bond between a parent and child. She spoke of the importance of vigilance, of community support, and of never losing hope. Her voice, once hushed by despair, now rang with a clear, unwavering strength. David, while still running his firm, found himself reevaluating his priorities. He sought out projects with a deeper purpose, architectural designs that served the community, that enhanced lives. The pursuit of power and prestige no longer held the same allure. He wanted to build, not just structures, but a better world, for Leo and for all children. He had learned that true success lay not in the height of his buildings, but in the strength of his family. Years passed. Leo grew into a bright, sensitive boy with a keen intelligence and a gentle spirit. The memories of his early ordeal remained, a faint scar on his young psyche, but they did not define him. He was a happy, well-adjusted child, surrounded by the unwavering love of his parents. He knew he was special, not because of what had happened, but because he was loved, fiercely and unconditionally. The family continued to visit the waterfront, occasionally, always together, always holding hands. It was no longer a place of fear, but a place they had reclaimed, a testament to their resilience. Sometimes, Leo would point to the toy store, a faint memory stirring within him, but mostly it was just another store, another place where he could choose a new book or a fun game. The shadows had finally receded, replaced by the bright, vibrant light of their shared life. Sarah and David, sitting on a park bench watching Leo play, would often exchange a knowing glance. Their journey had been arduous, marked by profound grief and unimaginable fear, but it had also been a journey of immense strength, of unwavering love, and of the enduring power of the human spirit. They had lost their son, and then found him again, Not just physically, but in a deeper, more profound sense. They had found their way back to each other, to their family, and to a life imbued with a renewed sense of purpose and gratitude. The waterfront development was eventually built, a stunning architectural marvel, but David had no regrets about his decision to step aside. He had built something far more significant, a secure, loving home for his son, a foundation of trust and resilience that would last a lifetime. He understood now that true wealth lay not in concrete and steel, but in the precious, irreplaceable moments he shared with Sarah and Leo, moments filled with laughter, love, and the enduring warmth of family. Life, they knew, was unpredictable, capable of throwing unimaginable challenges their way, but they also knew that they were stronger together, their bond forged in fire, capable of weathering any storm. And as Leo ran towards them, his face alight with joy, his arms outstretched for a hug, Sarah and David knew with absolute certainty that they had everything they truly needed.